Okay, you guys all stand and welcome my friend Heidi. I'm a little dry today. I'm going to grab my water. Good morning, family.
Good morning.
Thanks for welcoming me. And this week has been a really good week. And it's been a hard week. And the last couple months have been hard, last couple months. And I just want you to all know that I see you. I see your hearts. I see where you're at and how you're hurting. I don't see it all, but I see some of it, and that you're not alone. And there's people that you guys don't even know that have been praying for you guys. And it's just a picture of the body and how we're supposed to be together. And I think it represents almost like a marriage. When this is how it is in my marriage, at least, is that I feel like there are times that my husband is down and I'm up and I can lift him up, and there's times that I'm down and he's up and he can lift me up. And if I love him only when he loves me really well, then that doesn't work very well. And if we don't have the Lord, then when we're both down, we're really out of getting any kind of love. So I feel like that's what we've been able to do for you guys, and I feel like that you guys would do the same for us. So we love you. And there's people that will probably never meet you that really love you guys and have been praying for you. So thank you, Lord. I'm just going to pray. Father God, I thank you, Lord, for the worship this morning. I thank you for the creative people that you've put into this house, Lord. I ask that we know how to encourage and bless that creativity and all the giftings that are in this house, that we just, that you speak to us, Lord, on how to bless and encourage everyone to step into their giftings, Lord. I thank you for the people that are with the children right now. I speak a blessing over that, and I ask you to just fill them up, Father, so that they can pour out to the children and really teach them how to hear your voice and feel your presence, and that just becomes a blessing to the families that are involved here as well. I thank you, Lord, for your presence in this place. And I just ask you to use me this morning, Lord, for whatever it is that you want to speak. In Jesus' name. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. So the Lord kind of started things out for me to speak to you today by pointing out that ship. So everybody turn around and look in case you haven't noticed the ship that's up there in the circle. So I didn't know one time when my husband and I came here, my husband's name is Matthew, I didn't know when he came here for the first time with me. We both didn't know all the prophetic words that have been released over this body about that ship. And if you don't know, then you'll have to ask Kathy, because I couldn't even tell you what all those were. But my husband had a dream, and he saw this huge, almost like a cruise ship, like one of those really big ships coming down the Allegheny here. And it was actually too big for the river, like it filled the whole river. And and then when we told Greg and Kathy, they told us, all the words that have been released. And when the Lord brought that vision to my mind, it was like he was really speaking to me about the call that's on you guys specifically. And I feel like one of those things that he's really called you guys to has to do with family and receiving new people in as family. And I hear that over and over and over again from people, is that I feel like family, and Greg made me feel like I was the most important, person, and all those things that and I feel that when I'm here as well. I feel received into you guys' family. I feel received into the church family. And I feel like the Lord really wants to do a restoration of family in this place. And he started to show me the people that were coming on this ship. And I feel like what he was really speaking to my heart is a preparation for that ship. So what he said is, it's time to prepare the harbor for the ship to come. And really what he was speaking to me about was the harbor of our hearts. There's a place, you guys, where Kathy touched on it this morning, and Heather both touched on it as well in Romans 12, about how we are with each other. And the Lord, I feel like, has given our ministry tools so that, just like Melanie was saying about, when someone's really, really hurt you, it is really hard to love them. But when somebody loves you really well, it's easy to love them back. And even Satan does that. Even unbelievers do that, right? Even unbelievers will love people that really love them. And so this here, all of us together, is a training ground. Okay? Our interactions with each other is a training ground for us to expand the tent pegs of our heart. It's for us to learn how to really love people. And we get into a place where somebody offends us and we just don't love them. And we actually justify it to ourselves that we don't need to. And that's contrary to what the Word says. So I want to talk to you a little bit, and some of this is going to be repeat information, even from last week, what Chuck spoke on. And especially if you've sat in sessions with me this week, or you've been through Whole Heart, or anything like that, it might be repeat information. As I was talking to the Lord, I said, Lord, there's going to be a lot of people that have already heard some of this. Like, maybe I could speak something brand new, And he told me, there's nothing new under the sun. So don't think that you've got something new. And also that, I don't know how you guys feel, but when like that stuff that Chuck spoke on last week, I've heard 100 times. And I've released 100 times to people the same exact message. But if you receive from the Holy Spirit, it's like something happens in your heart where it just kind of goes in and goes deep, and there's a part of healing that actually occurs just by receiving the Word. And so I just want to encourage everybody. I'm just going to have you close your eyes real quick. And I'm just going to have you just internally repeat after me, Holy Spirit, just come and allow me to receive every word that's from you and penetrate to the deepest parts of my heart, even into those hurt parts of my heart. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. And one of the other things about, the ship coming in is that I really feel like this is an equipping center. I've heard you guys say that before too, so I know that the leadership here feels the same way. So if we're to equip, what we don't want to do is have people come in and get wounded, right? And I have heard, and I've experienced myself, that leaders in a church, their biggest trials sometimes in their life end up being things that they've received from inside the church. It's not from, some sort of outside force that's coming spiritually against them and all this stuff. It's from people's woundedness that are wounding them. And that's got to change. We've got to be the blessing for them. We've got to lift them up. We've got to encourage, and we've got to, but here's the thing, is that if you have expectations on somebody else, even what family looks like, because you've been really wounded in your family growing up, and we've all been wounded in our families growing up, all of us, then all of a sudden somebody doesn't meet your expectations and it wounds you again. It hurts your heart. And so to recognize, oh, this is hurting my heart, that means I have to do something. That means that I need to fix my heart. And what we a lot of times focus on, I think we even teach our children from a young age, is if they just change, if my circumstances change, if the world around me just changes, then I'll be okay. Then I'll feel okay. So it's this outward thing. I think we do it to our kids even when we say, go say you're sorry. It's like we're actually teaching them, even if their heart doesn't feel like it, that somehow that sorry equals reconciliation and forgiveness. And you guys have all heard kids like, sorry, you know, like they don't, no, it's not, there's nothing happening in the heart, you know. And so we have to get to a place where we really understand that we are 100% responsible for our own heart. And if I'm not loving unconditionally, that means that something's going on in my heart. It doesn't excuse other people's behaviors, and it doesn't mean that there's not legitimate, real hurts happening. But I can try to control and manipulate so that other people change, but it doesn't work very well. It usually doesn't produce change. It usually means now I'm wounding them back because I'm trying to control and manipulate. And it's this back and forth exchange that really becomes this clanging cymbal. You know, there's just no love. It's just void of love. And we just keep wounding each other, and then we keep, you know, the fake stuff, you know, fake love and different things like that to try to make up for it when all of this is going on in our hearts. And so, One Whole Heart in the ministry that we have is just one tool to help with that. It's just one tool, but the Lord can bring healing to people's hearts in an encounter with Him. He can bring healing to people's hearts by just reading truth in His Word. And so there is no kind of like, it has to be this way, it has to look this way. But I think if I've got tools in front of me, then I want to use whatever tools the Lord would bring in front of me. And I want to use them all, actually. I try to go for all of them because I want to live in the fullness that God created me for. And I want to be able to release that to other people. But if I have all those hurts going on in my heart, then God's still small voice becomes really hard to hear at times, because the wounded places of my heart speak, okay? So what that sounds like sometimes is, you idiot, what do you think you're doing? Or, nobody's ever going to accept you, just leave. You know, those wounded places, it has a voice for us. And so then all of a sudden it's like, Lord, you know, I feel like you want me to go minister to that person, but they've really hurt me. And I really don't want to. And then we can justify how we hear from the Lord, like, God's going to bring somebody else, you know. He will. He loves people, you know. He's not dependent on me. But I want to be able to walk step by step with the Lord and walking that out. And so for me, the first step of preparing the heart of my heart is that I'm gonna get healed from those things, and I'm gonna start to recognize the thoughts that are coming in. I don't have to feel really angry at somebody in order to recognize that the thoughts going on in my head are from a wounded place in my heart, and not just, you know, they're just not the Lord. And so when we start to recognize those things, that's when we can start to understand, oh, I'm in my flesh right now. So that's what Chuck talked about a lot last week, is like, there really is this place where you're either in the spirit or the flesh. And the more that we get our hearts healed, and the more that we're walking in the spirit, the more that all of a sudden it's like that spirit part actually becomes stronger than the flesh part. And so it becomes almost like a habit. of just pressing into the Lord and walking in the Spirit. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay, so I'm going to have you guys turn to Romans 12. It's where Heather mentioned too, but the Lord brought me like right before that, so it was really, really good. I have the Bible that I'm reading out of is the Revealing Jewish Roots in Power. And by roots, I mean roots. Okay, so Romans 12. Where am I? Here we go. 1 and 2. Therefore, I urge you, brothers, through the compassion of God, to present your bodies holy, living offerings, pleasing to God, your spiritual service, and stop being conformed to this age. But you must from the inside continually be changed into another form by the renovation of your mind, to prove what is the good and pleasing and perfect will of God for you. And so what happens is that God really created us to be those living vessels and to release to other people to be his hands and feet. And so what we want to do is we want to continually allow him to come in and heal those places of our heart. So for us, there's a little bit of a three-part process, I guess, that we really encourage people to walk through, and that has to do with healing the brokenness from typically childhood traumas. And I use the word trauma really, really loosely. It's just kind of any hurt in your heart. And how many of you have ever been in a fight with somebody and you're like, oh, this is definitely not just about this. Like, there's a whole lot of other stuff being brought into, my relationship with this person right now. And so what we want to do is we want to figure out, why do I react the way that I do? Am I believing any lies about myself? Am I believing any lies about God? Am I believing any lies about other people? And I want to renounce those lies and forgive the people that brought those lies into my life. And then God reveals his truth to those places so that we can start walking out that truth. I kind of already went through all that part, so I'm ahead of the game. Okay, the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is this idea, and Chuck did touch on this last week, I believe, but this idea that of taking your thoughts captive, okay? And I believe that sometimes there's confusion on what it looks like to differentiate between your thoughts that are coming from the broken places of your heart and the thoughts that come from the enemy. And what I like to do is I like to focus on what's going on in the heart first and make sure, so if I'm hearing something that really sounds like a lie from the enemy, okay, I want to know, is there a broken place in my heart that's believing that lie and that's actually speaking that lie to myself, and I want to heal that part of my heart so the enemy has no place in me, okay? And so when in 2 Corinthians, it talks about taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. The image that the Lord gives me in my mind when I hear that verse is like, I'm taking those hurt places of my heart and I'm putting them at the foot of the cross because Jesus' blood already paid for all of that. And so that to me is the obedience of Christ. And I think if we get into a place where we hear these thoughts and we try to push them out or cast them out and just say, no, I'm not listening to that, then they tend to keep coming back. They tend to just keep, and it almost can bring some shame and condemnation in. What's wrong with me? Why can't I, why does the enemy still keep attacking me in this way over and over and over again? And there's definitely truth that the enemy comes and speaks things to you. And so for me, I try to take care of the areas of my heart first and say, Lord, am I believing this lie? And what made me start believing this lie? and start walking through that process with the Lord so that I can heal the broken places of my heart, but also close the door so that the enemy has no right to speak to me in that way. Then when the thought comes, I say, that's not my thought. And I literally reject the thought, and I don't receive it as my own, especially the crazy thoughts. So Chris Valentine has this teaching. Is that what we were talking about? Yeah. So he does this teaching, I think it's in Spirit Wars. And he, my husband and I were watching, this like 10 years ago, we were watching on TV his sermon that he was speaking or whatever. And he said to all of the people in the room, he said, raise your hand if you've ever had the thought of just like pulling your steering wheel and just like crashing your car real quick. And almost everyone in the room raised their hand. And I was like, I'm sitting there on the couch and I'm thinking, I've had that thought. But, I had a period of time where I just walked in a lot of sin. I had a lot of junk. I had a lot of baggage when I came into my marriage. And my husband, I'm not putting him on a pedestal or anything. He's not a perfect man, but he just didn't. Like, he didn't have the same stuff as me. And so I look over at him and I said, have you ever had that thought? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, oh, it's got to be the enemy. Because he's not like the crazy one, And that just like astounded me that so many people had that same thought. And I just thought, Lord, what is going on with this? Obviously, the enemy just uses the same tactics over and over and over again. You can probably see that through beginning of time when he first had dominion on the earth, or thinks he has until Jesus came. You know what I'm saying? And so I was asking the Lord about it. Like, why does nobody in that room probably crashed their car? I didn't crash my car. I just had the thought. And the Lord said, because his purpose in doing it wasn't for you to crash your car. Now, maybe there's some people that are already suicidal and they actually do crash their car when they have that thought, but most of the people, they don't crash their car. But almost all of the people receive the thought as their own and think that there's something wrong with them. And it's coming to steal your identity, who God created you to be. When I had that thought, I thought, I'm not telling anybody this. They're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm suicidal or something, and I'm not. I don't know why, And then you think, well, I guess I am I feel depressed sometimes, and maybe I am crazy. Maybe I'm just crazy. And so I think it's really important to start to understand the distinguishing in these thoughts, and really, taking care of the hurting places of your heart. I could have a thought come in that I want to crash my car from a broken place in my heart. And if I say, I'm not receiving that thought, and I don't take care of that place in my heart, it's going to come back again. And it's just going to keep coming back. And pretty soon, the enemy knows right where to hit you. He knows exactly what to do to hit you where you're already wounded, where you're already down, right? And we want to build up this armor around us in the Lord, so that there's not even a little kink in our armor, right? The other thing that the Lord was speaking to me about was from Psalm 19:15. The words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart will be acceptable in your sight, Lord, my rock and my redeemer. And I think that what happens when we have a lot of broken places in our heart is that a lot of times it comes in this racing thought pattern. And it's really hard to meditate on what God says and who He is and who He says we are if we have all these things going on. And what tends to happen, that I see at least in people who are filled with the Spirit of God, that love the Lord, they're really desiring to walk fully with the Lord, is that there's this disparity between what they know to be true in their mind and what they feel at times in their heart. And it brings so much shame and guilt with it, and it almost creates this culture, atmosphere in the church of not being transparent with each other. Because if I say some of the thoughts coming from the broken places in my heart, people are going to think that I can't, be on worship team, or I can't, they don't even want to be my friend maybe, or whatever those things are. So the process of taking care of what's going on in your heart and opening up to other people and being transparent will actually change the culture in the church. Because I don't know how you guys have felt, but at times when somebody's been really honest with me about what's going on with them and how much they're hurting and the things going on in their heart, it makes me feel safe to be more honest with them. And it's almost like, even if it's another person, if I've seen it modeled to me how to be transparent, it's easier for me to just go to other people even and be more transparent. So I want to encourage you guys to start doing that. Now, people are going to wound you at times when you are transparent with them, because they might take what you told them in confidence and go tell someone else. They might not respond in the way that you need them to respond. And they might respond out of their flesh, which is wounding. Always, even if it doesn't feel wounding, if it satisfies your flesh, it still is not from the Spirit of the Lord. And so there's just a process of understanding that you've got to get what you really need from the Lord. You've got to get filled up from the Lord first. He has to be your first love. If your first love is the love of man and their words for you and their the value that they give you, you're always going to be lacking. And what we really like to teach on is how even from a young age, as a child, you have this expectation that your parents are really your God. And it's really important for us as parents to teach our children how to go to the Lord and how not to depend on us 100% of the time. Now, for me, that doesn't look like saying to my son, oh, stop crying, you don't need me to comfort you. I believe that I'm supposed to be a reflection of the Lord to him. But what it does mean is that we can understand that we were never created to be somebody else's 100% of what they need all the time. We were never created for that. And so even as parents, we were never created to protect our children 100% of the time. We can't, actually. We can't. Because even if they're just in the other room, somebody could say something mean to them. And all of a sudden, if you have woundings in your heart about your own parents not protecting you from maybe even something major, what we do is we tend to pull our children in, and we don't let them do anything, and when they do, it's all fear, something's going to happen to them and that sort of thing. And that's just coming from not understanding when you're little that Jesus was there the whole time. He never left you, and he'll never leave you. And what Kathy said earlier about losing your voice and us getting our voice back was so good. And most traumas actually come from losing our voice, from being forced to do something that you didn't want to do, or you didn't feel like you even had a choice then. You couldn't even say anything about. And children, of course, they don't even know a lot of times what's right and wrong and how to say no to things. And so what I think is really important is getting to a place where we're really pressing into the Lord. If you sat with me in sessions this week, you probably already heard this, but what the Lord showed me is this glass jar, like those old-fashioned Sunday glass jars, okay? And he showed me that this specifically had to do with marriage, but it relates to any relationship that you have, even with your children. Sometimes we're wounded ourselves, and we want to get from our children the love that we really need from the Lord. Does that make sense? And so what he showed me is that the love and the encouragement and the words and everything that we receive from other people is really supposed to be like the cherry on top of the sundae. And God is supposed to be all the ice cream, all the good stuff, all your favorite flavors and the really good stuff that fills you up. And what happens is that if you haven't been filled up by the Lord in that way, when somebody comes along and they give you that little cherry on top, it just falls, it like planks to the bottom of that glass. And it's just, it doesn't ever feel like enough. And so if we can really be filled up by the Lord, all of a sudden somebody like my husband even, I wish that he would tell me how much he appreciates me, and my husband's actually really good at this, but I wish he would tell me that he appreciates, like, I did the dishes, and I cleaned up, and I did all these things to bless him, and he didn't really notice, but he did say thank you to me after dinner. And all of a sudden, it's like that cherry falls down to the bottom of the glass, and I can't even receive that thank you as a blessing. But if I'm filled up by the Lord, and he's telling me my value, he's telling me my worth, he's telling me how much he loves and appreciates me, all of a sudden when my husband tells me, thank you for dinner, it doesn't feel like I'm missing all this other stuff, because the Lord is filling me up in all those ways. Amen. The other verse that the Lord gave me for today comes from Luke 6:43 through 45, where it speaks about out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And I want to encourage you guys that even if you've trained yourself to not say the things that are going on in your heart, does that make sense? How people have trained themselves not to say those things, and some people don't have the self-control to do that, so they just say the stuff. Either way, you're going to be releasing what is in the abundance of your heart to other people. And so this area is vital to who God created you to be. I want to share with you a vision that the Lord gave me. Probably, I don't remember when we did training here, maybe like a year and a half, 2 years, whatever, October, 2 years ago. And the Lord showed me this vision and it really spoke to the cultural shift that he wants to do here in this body. And what it was is like this back-to-back vision of the same exact scenario repeated. And the first scenario was these two women talking to each other, and then one woman comes up to the other and she says, I'm really hurting. My mother-in-law is really nasty to me. She says these things, it really hurts my heart. And the Lord showed me it just wasn't gossip. Like, she really needed help, and she was really coming to her friend to just, say, I don't know what to do. And this other woman says to her, let's pray for her. And they just started really praying for her. And there was no condemnation. I didn't feel anything was wrong with that scenario. But then the Lord showed me the same scenario over again. And instead of the woman saying, let's pray for her, the woman said, let me help you forgive her. And they started walking through this process of forgiveness. And there is nothing wrong with praying for people and for the Lord to shift their heart. But a lot of times, our prayers are actually manipulation. Because what we want to do is we want to pray for the world to make us feel good. We want to pray for people to change so that we don't have to be triggered anymore and we don't have to feel bad anymore. And when you think about it like that, it's actually a really huge shift. And so I don't want everyone to get into a place where they're second-guessing their conversations with each other and everything. It's just a place of understanding, okay, I am fully responsible for what's going on in my heart. I can't be responsible for anything that's going on in anybody else's heart. And I'm not responsible for their heart. I'm responsible for my heart. I can't change them. I can't try to control and manipulate things to change them. And the world is always going to come out. My heart is 100% healed. There's still going to be hurts that come. And I really believe that we can walk in the Spirit 100% of the time. I don't know anyone that is yet. I'm not. But I do believe that there's a place where we can step towards that as much as possible. And in our ministry, really the reason why Chuck started this ministry is because he was out on the streets praying for people and praying for deliverance and healing, and people were being like radically touched by the Lord, and it was just awesome. But then he'd see these drug addicts, weeks later, and they're just still in the same place. They got saved and everything, they're still in the same place, and he just cried out to the Lord, there's got to be lasting fruit. How do I get to this place where there's lasting fruit, Lord? Show me. And he just started stepping into it. And so that's been because Chuck is my spiritual father, and because I just kind of tuck myself in under his wings, and I just, everything that I've learned has pretty much come from Chuck or God, and I kind of walk in what he walks, his anointing and what he walks in. And so I'm just crying out, Lord, I've got to see lasting fruit in my ministry, Lord. I've got to see people's lives change. And the Lord just recently brought me back to a place, and he said, listen, if there was some sort of a timeline in people's lives, then over here people are unsaved and they're lost and they're just so far from the Lord, and over here they're walking in the Spirit 100% of the time. If somebody moves on that timeline, even this much, even just like I almost can't see it, I almost can't even see the movement, but it's here, then you grab a hold of that with a thankful heart. And you say, Lord, I'm going to call it blessed. I'm not gonna look at the lack and what's not there, but I'm going to call it blessed. And I definitely still want to see lasting fruit in my ministry, but there's a place where we have to receive that for ourselves, that if we're walking anywhere closer to that place, then we come before the Lord with a thankful heart, and we receive that as a blessing, instead of being in a place that's kind of like the glass half full, half empty thing. Where is your heart going to land? And always looking at things as though it's just not enough. Or can we grab a hold of the blessings that we already have? Because we are blessed. This house is a blessed house. And you people are blessed people in the Lord. One thing that I noticed this last time when I was in Malawi, Africa, I was praying for some, mostly women in a school, and Malawi is one of the poorest nations of the world. I mean, people there, like, the poverty just is not what we would even know about most of the time, And every single person that I prayed for, when I asked them, how can I pray for you? What do you need God to do in your life? They said, finances. It was all, not all, they had lots of other things, but every single one of them, the consistent thing throughout there was money. And all of a sudden the Lord just brought this to my mind. Whenever you pray for people in the United States and you ask them what they need prayer for, it's almost always money. And I was like, that's interesting, Lord, because we have a lot more money than what they have. But we always think what we have is not enough. We always want, it's almost, I guess maybe you could say like a greediness, but I think it's also just not having a thankful heart. And I really believe the Lord wants us to step into that and being, I read a book it was probably 10 years ago, called, now I'm not going to remember it, 1,000 Gifts? Yeah. And it's, Anne Hoskin. And it is all about her grabbing thankfulness. And what I really loved about it is going into like the traumas and the really hard things and grabbing a hold of thankfulness even in that, considering it all joy. And that's, it's against our human nature. It's got to be an intentional effort, because if we don't intentionally put ourselves in that place, we just won't be. Real quick, what I wanted to talk to you guys about was this place of family again, okay? And sometimes what happens in forgiveness is that if somebody says something to me and I walk away from the conversation, I just kind of feel rejected, but I know they didn't intentionally reject me, a lot of times I won't forgive them. Because I think, well, they didn't mean that. And so I just kind of dismiss it. And I just want to tell you guys that I forgive people for things that I think they might be thinking all the time. And it's not a blame thing, okay? Forgiveness doesn't put blame on people. Forgiveness has to do with me. It's my heart before the Lord. And so it's really important to understand that, first of all, if you walk away from a conversation, you feel rejected, there's not only forgiveness to do for that person, even if they didn't mean to make you feel rejected, but there's also a place of understanding that it might be because I felt rejected over and over again as a child, right? You know, those things just pop up in us. And so there's that place. That's why we walk with people through those harder to reach areas, because a lot of times there's just a lot going on. It's hard to walk it by yourself sometimes. The Lord can do it, but it's also kind of training yourself to get into the place where all of a sudden I'm recognizing, oh, I need to forgive them for making me feel rejected, for making me feel like they just don't really like me or value me. And if we can get ourselves into that habit, it can really help us to start to be in that place where we're taking responsibility for our own hearts instead of trying to change the people around us to feel good. And so I'm gonna take you guys through just a little healing exercise this morning. And I really want to focus on this church family, because I think it's really, and if you're visitors and you have another church family, then we'll focus on that church family. But I think it's really important for us to be in a place where the people around us that have hurt us, we're actually releasing them and releasing our own expectations that we have over them to somehow have to perform and be perfect for us to feel okay. Does that make sense? So I want to take you guys through that, and this is what I want to say, okay, is that there's a place where when we go through trials, how many of you know that losing Pastor Greg is a big trial in each of your individual hearts, but also as a body? And when we lose people that we really love and are a part of our lives and have spoken into our lives, that's a place that we can be triggered from lots of other traumas in our lives. And it can start this overwhelming process. And what I really want to see for you guys is that the grieving process is something that the Lord guides you through, okay? But sometimes all the traumas make it really hard to even step into the grieving process with the Lord, because there's so much going on in your hearts, okay? And I feel like this is a time and a place, okay, to really love each other well. Really be in a place where God comes in and restores each one of our hearts, and that we as a body become closer because of this trial. We as a body come out on the other end and say, we love each other more because of this. We love each other better. And we know how to step out of a place where we're wounding each other. Because that just happens in daily conversations even. But I think Kathy was saying before that sometimes it's like, it almost hurts us more in the church because all of a sudden there's this expectation that this is the church, nobody should ever hurt me. And we're not going to stop hurting each other until each of us individually is walking in the Spirit 100% of the time. We're just not. Because we are not a perfect people. And even if I say something to you and I really love you and I'm gentle and I'm kind and I'm saying, if I'm not releasing it in the Spirit of God, there's a wounding that's going to come in, even if you don't fully recognize, even if it doesn't feel like a wound. Does that make sense? And so this is just a little bit closer to the Lord. It's not a place that all of a sudden, I mean, the Lord, the Spirit of God can come and do whatever He wants. And I just fully welcome that, Lord, that you can just come and do whatever you want in this place. But any step towards loving people unconditionally, any step towards healing is a worthwhile step in my book. So I want to encourage you guys that even if there's a wounding in your heart, okay, just from Pastor Greg leaving, a lot of people don't forgive someone who's passed away because it wasn't their fault they passed away. It wasn't his fault they passed away. But if you feel rejected or abandoned in any way, it's okay to forgive them. It's okay to forgive other people for something that they said to you right after you found out that hurt your heart, even though they were just trying to be kind and loving to you. If it hurt your heart, then it's okay to forgive. And so I'm just going to have everybody close their eyes right now so you can just focus on the Lord. And I'm just going to have you repeat after me, and when you do, I want you to just receive what the Lord says to you. So just grab that first thought that comes to you, and I want you to, through your imagination, grab the things that you need to forgive and place them at the foot of the cross, okay? So just through your imagination, imagine a cross and just grab each one of those things that the Lord brings to your mind to forgive. And just place each one at the foot of the cross, and then I'm going to walk you through forgiving all those things. So just say, Abba, Father, who would you have me forgive right now that's in this church family? Just take your time, and after you get something, ask the Lord, what else? Get the next thing. What else? Keep practicing. So just ask them one more time. Father's there in us. Right? You have me forgive. I'm just going to have you say after me, Abba, Father, I choose to forgive every person for everything in place of a cross, for every word that they said to me that hurt my heart, and for every time they didn't say or do what I needed them to. I fully forgive every person that I haven't felt that truly sees me. And I ask forgiveness, Lord, for my unforgiveness. It's just as much a sin as what they've done to me. And I place all of these things under the blood of the cross, and I sever that from my life. In the name of Jesus. I break all ungodly soul ties with each person, and I give back to them all that belongs to them, and I take back for myself all that belongs to me, covered by the blood of Jesus. Father God, I just ask you to come right now with your Holy Spirit. I ask for you to come, Lord, really, really close to all of the hurting places in their heart, all the places of anger, all the places of bitterness, all the places of self-hatred, any place of anxiety. I just ask for you to come really, really close and take all of those places all the way into yourself, Lord. Every hurting place of the heart, just lift off of each person here. Just lift. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Just come as comforter, Lord, into every place in the heart that's grieving right now, Father God. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. 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 I felt like the Lord showed me that Kathy and I have talked about this picture. I don't know if you've talked to everybody about it, but this picture about, really tending the garden of your heart, like gardening your heart, pulling those weeds up. And I feel like it's this process of, one little weed here and one little weed here. And sometimes you go through and you just weed the whole garden all at once. And then, some more will come up and you just keep weeding. And I feel like there's a reason why the Lord has this up here and then the ship up there. I felt like he was showing me this like beginning to end reminder of you guys, of the process of really tending to your heart, preparing the harbor. And I feel like as you guys walk into church and as you guys walk out, I'm just going to ask you, Father God, to use these symbols as a reminder in everyone's heart that, there's just these things. I've got to pay attention. I've got to pay attention. I have to be intentional towards my heart. I have to meditate on the things of the Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. And I just ask the Lord to bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Ask you to lift your countenance upon them, Lord, and give them your perfect peace. Thank you, Lord.
as we walk through this forgiveness, one of the things that I really felt like the Lord wanted me to address to all of you guys is that I believe that a lie has crept in that would want to try to bring separation or make you want to feel like you're not part of the family. And I believe that lie is that we knew more than we told you. And that is not the truth. So, I think some people felt like that we knew that Greg was sicker than he was. That is not the truth. Alright? The truth is that we didn't know. The truth is the doctors didn't even know. So, when we went to the hospital that Tuesday, that the doctor was shocked. That's what I would say. The doctor was shocked. And so were we. But we were still believing God that he was going to heal him. I mean, how many things has Greg come through, right? All right? So I want to say to you guys, that's why I wanted you to walk through the forgiveness first. Okay? Because you might have thought you had to forgive me, all right, or the family. We kept nothing from you. We kept nothing from you. There was nothing that we didn't know that we didn't tell you. All right? So that is the truth. So if the enemy tries to come in with you with any other lie, that is not the truth. All right? How's everybody doing? All right. So I want to tell you this too, is when Heidi said about seeing this picture in the ship, it was really interesting because there's two pictures that are going to be on either side. There's got pictures that are on either side of that are in the process right now. Carrie's painting them. And I feel like it's really interesting that they're in the process. Right? Because the one is what does a heart look like that's all tangled up in weeds. Alright? And she's gotten that one done. Because I think we all have that one. Alright? And then the other one is what happens whenever our hearts are fully alive and there's life coming out of them. You know? She hasn't gotten that one done yet. But she'll have it here at the end of March. So, alright. Did you want to minister to anything else?
We're just going to ask anybody who'd like to receive some prayer to come on up. I have some people, I think Colette and Kathy and Heather are going to help minister to people. And I just want to really encourage you guys to step towards a place and a time, whether it's here today or just in the coming days and weeks, into a place of intimacy with the Lord, okay? Into you see, Lord. And I feel like what the Lord really put on my heart to minister to you guys today. I mean, our One Whole Heart is a prophetic ministry. It's a deliverance ministry. It's and what we walk in a lot is the prophetic, and it's how we pray for people. It's kind of our lifeblood. It's what we do. But I felt like the Lord really showed me today to just really pray for an infilling and for inner healing to come to your heart through His presence, and for you to just be touched by the Lord in a really deep, intimate place in your heart. And I feel like what He really wants to do is almost graduate us to a place from that place of filling our Sunday up with what can only be filled by the Lord, and really seeking after a prophetic word or a word of encouragement, or needing that person to look at me the right way, or making sure that they invited me to come along. All those things that make us feel good. I feel like he wants to, Kate's gonna minister with us too. He wants us to move into a place where He's our main thing. He's what really fills us up. And all those things from people fill us up in the Lord. But we can't rest in a place where we have to have those things from people to be filled by the Lord. And sometimes He moves you into a season where you're not receiving those things anymore because He wants to highlight that to your heart. And so today I'm just going to ask you guys to come forward if you'd like some prayer. And we'd love to just take some time to love on you, love on your heart, and ask the Lord to come. Amen.